I stood at that altar in my sister's dress, watching a man I'd never spoken to decide my entire future in under 10 seconds. He didn't choose me because he wanted me. He chose me because he was angry. And I was stupid enough to say yes. This is the story of how a wedding day disaster became the beginning of something nobody saw coming, least of all me. Stay until the end to see how it all turned out, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. The church smelled like roses and lies. I could smell both from where I stood in the back corner, pressed against the wall like I was trying to disappear into the wood paneling, which, honestly, I was. The entire town of Copperhill had crammed into St. Michael's for what was supposed to be the wedding of the decade. My sister Clara to Caleb Royce, uniting the Miller cattle empire with the Royce mining fortune. 2 dynasties, 1 ceremony, a partnership that would reshape the entire territory. Except Clara wasn't here. My father's face had gone from red to purple about 20 minutes ago, and it hadn't improved since. He stood near the altar in his best suit, the one he'd had tailored specially in Denver, and he looked like a man watching his legacy burn down while the whole town took notes for gossip later. Because that's exactly what was happening. Where the hell is she? His voice carried despite his attempt at a whisper. My mother touched his arm, but he shook her off. It's been 40 minutes, Margaret. 40 goddamn minutes. I knew where Clara was. I'd known since I woke up at dawn to find her bed empty and a note on my pillow written in her perfect flowing script. Don't hate me. I couldn't do it. Tell Daddy I'm sorry, but not sorry enough to come back. She'd run off with Jackson Wade, a drifter who'd worked our ranch for exactly 6 weeks before my sister decided he hung the moon and stars. I'd watched her sneak out to meet him for the past month, watched her practice signing Clara Wade in the margins of her diary. I'd known this was coming the way you know a storm's rolling in. You can feel it in the air even before the sky turns dark. But I hadn't said a word. Because Clara never listened to me anyway, and our father would have locked her in her room until the wedding, which would have just made everything worse. So now here we were. The whispers had started soft, like rustling leaves, but they'd grown louder as the minutes ticked past. 300 people packed into pews, dressed in their finest, watching the Miller family unravel in real time. I could feel their eyes sliding past my parents to land on me, the other Miller daughter, the spare, the one nobody thought about much. I'd heard the word humiliation at least a dozen times already, hissed between neighbors who thought they were being discreet. Mrs. Patterson in the 3rd row had actually laughed, a short, sharp sound she'd tried to cover with a cough, but I'd heard it. The Royce family occupied the front left section, all 8 of them lined up like they were posing for a photograph that would go in the history books. Probably would have if this wedding had actually happened. Caleb's father, Edmund Royce, sat at the end of the first pew with the posture of a man who'd never been disrespected in his entire life and didn't plan to start now. His expression hadn't changed in the past hour, carved from stone, giving away absolutely nothing. And Caleb stood at the altar next to Reverend Matthews, hands clasped behind his back, staring at the door like he could make my sister materialize through sheer force of will. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than our ranch hands made in a year, and his jaw was set so tight I thought his teeth might crack. I'd met him exactly twice before today. Once at the engagement party where he'd shaken my hand and said, "Nice to meet you, Eliza," before turning back to Clara. And once at a dinner 3 weeks ago, where he'd sat across from me and talked cattle prices with my father for 2 hours without looking at me once. He was handsome in that clean, severe way some men are. Dark hair, darker eyes, the kind of face that looked like it had been designed by someone who cared more about angles than warmth. He didn't smile much from what I'd seen. Clara had complained about it constantly. "He's so serious, Ellie," she'd said, sprawled across my bed the night after the engagement. "He never laughs at my jokes. It's like marrying a statue." "Maybe he's nervous," I'd offered, because I'd been stupid enough to think my sister would actually go through with it. Clara had rolled her eyes. "He's not nervous, he's boring, but Daddy says this marriage is important and the Royces have more money than sense, so I'll make it work." She'd paused, then grinned at me. "At least until something better comes along." Turned out Jackson Wade counted as something better. My father's voice cut through my thoughts. "Someone find her. Now. Check the house again. Check the stables. Check every goddamn place she might be hiding. Thomas. My mother's voice was quiet, but it had that edge it got when she was barely holding herself together. She's not hiding. Then where the hell is she, Margaret? My mother didn't answer. She knew. I could see it in the way she wouldn't meet anyone's eyes, the way her hands twisted the handkerchief in her lap until the lace started to tear. She'd probably found the note in Clara's room, or maybe she'd known all along, the way mothers sometimes do. The Reverend cleared his throat. Mr. Miller, perhaps we should— We're not doing anything until my daughter gets here, my father snapped. She's coming. She's late. Women get nervous before weddings, that's all. She'll be here. But she wouldn't. I knew it. My mother knew it. And from the look on Edmund Royce's face, he was starting to figure it out too. I should have said something then. Should have stepped forward and ended this torture, put everyone out of their misery. But my throat had closed up, and my feet felt nailed to the floor, and the part of me that had spent 23 years being invisible didn't know how to suddenly demand attention. So I stayed quiet. That's when the church doors opened. Every head turned. My father's face flooded with relief, until he saw it wasn't Clara. It was Matthew Granger, one of our ranch hands, hat in his hands, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Mr. Miller, he said, his voice rough. We found this at the stable. He held out an envelope. My father snatched it from him, tore it open, and read whatever was inside. I watched the color drain from his face, then come flooding back twice as dark. That goddamn— He crumpled the paper in his fist. She's gone. Ran off with that worthless drifter, left a note saying— He couldn't finish, just stood there shaking with rage while 300 people stared. The whispers exploded into full conversation. I heard Clara's name 50 times in 10 seconds, mixed with words like disgrace and scandal and those poor Royces. Edmund Royce stood up. Not quickly. He didn't do anything quickly. He rose with the careful control of a man who'd built an empire and destroyed competitors and didn't tolerate failure in any form. It appears, he said, his voice carrying effortlessly over the chaos, that we've all been made fools of today. My father looked like he might actually cry, or murder someone, possibly both. Edmund, I swear I didn't know. I had no idea she would— It doesn't matter what you knew. Edmund's tone could have frozen water. What matters is that my son is standing at an altar in front of everyone who matters in this territory, and there's no bride. Your family has humiliated mine. There will be consequences for that. Now hold on, my father started, but Edmund wasn't done. This alliance was meant to unite our families, to strengthen both our positions. Your daughter has made that impossible. He glanced at Caleb, who hadn't moved, hadn't reacted at all. We're leaving. That snapped Caleb out of whatever trance he'd been in. No. Edmund turned. Excuse me? I said no. Caleb's voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise like a blade. We're not leaving. Son, there's no point in— There's another Miller daughter. Oh no. Every eye in that church found me. I felt it like a physical weight, pressing down on my shoulders, making it hard to breathe. My mother made a small sound. My father's expression went blank with shock. Edmund followed his son's gaze until he was staring right at me. That's Eliza, the younger one. I know who she is, Caleb said. She's not the one we negotiated for. No, but she's here, and Clara's not, and I'm not walking out of this church without a wife. Caleb finally moved, turning to face his father fully. You said this alliance was critical. You said it would secure our position for the next generation. You said a lot of things about how important this marriage was. It is important, but that I'm getting married today. Caleb looked at me again, and I couldn't read his expression at all. Unless she objects. I couldn't speak, couldn't think. This wasn't happening. This was insane. My father found his voice first. Eliza's not— She's not prepared for this. Clara was raised to— To what? Run off with a ranch hand? Caleb's tone turned sharp. I don't care what Clara was raised to do. I care what needs to happen right now. Edmund's eyes narrowed. You're angry. I understand. But making a rash decision won't— I'm not being rash, I'm being practical. Caleb gestured at the packed church. Everyone's already here. The contracts are drawn up. We can amend them to change the name. The alliance still happens, and we don't lose face by running away like cowards. Caleb, Edmund's voice dropped to a warning tone. Think about what you're doing. I have. Have you thought about what it means if we walk out of here with nothing? Every person in this room will know the Royces got humiliated by the Millers, and we just took it. You think our competitors won't use that? Caleb shook his head. This way we turn it around. We show them nothing can shake us, that we adapt, that we win anyway. The logic was sound. I'd give him that. Cold and calculated, but sound. He wasn't doing this for me. He was doing it to save face, to prove a point. I was just convenient. Edmund studied his son for a long moment, then turned that calculating gaze on me. I felt like a horse being evaluated at auction. Can she even run a household? She runs ours, my mother said quietly. Everyone looked at her. She'd barely said 10 words this whole time, but now she straightened her spine and met Edmund's stare. Clara was the pretty one, the charming one. Eliza's the one who keeps our books, manages our staff, and makes sure nothing falls apart. If you want someone who can actually help build something instead of just looking good at parties, you're looking at her. I'd never heard my mother describe me that way. Had never heard her say anything much about me at all, honestly. Clara had always taken up so much space in every conversation that I'd just faded into the background. Margaret, my father hissed, but she ignored him. Edmund's expression shifted slightly. Not approval exactly, but something like interest. Thomas, is this true? My father opened his mouth, closed it, then sighed. Yes. Eliza handles most of the practical side of our operation, has for years. Interesting? Edmund looked at me again. Can you speak, girl, or are you mute? The question startled a laugh out of me, sharp, slightly hysterical. I can speak. Then speak. Do you want this? Did I want this? Want to marry a complete stranger who was only asking because he was angry and wanted to prove something to his father? Want to stand in for my beautiful, charming sister who'd literally run away rather than marry this man? No. Obviously not. But I looked at my father's devastated face, at my mother's quiet desperation, at the 300 people waiting to see the Miller family completely destroyed. I thought about the alliance that would crumble, the business deals that would fall through, the loans my father had taken out expecting this merger to secure everything. And I thought about going home to that empty house, to my quiet room where nobody noticed me, to the rest of my invisible life. At least this way something would change. Yes, I heard myself say. I'll do it. The church exploded into noise again. Shocked gasps, excited whispers, a few people actually cheering like this was entertainment, which I suppose it was. My father grabbed my arm. Eliza, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I pulled away gently. Unless you have a better solution? He didn't. We both knew it. Caleb walked toward me, his footsteps echoing on the stone floor. When he reached me, he held out his hand. We should talk. Privately. I took his hand because I didn't know what else to do. His grip was warm, firm, completely impersonal. He led me to the small room behind the altar where brides usually waited before their entrance. Someone, probably Clara, had left flowers scattered across the table, and there was a veil draped over the chair that she'd never worn. Caleb closed the door, and suddenly the noise from the church became muffled, distant. We were alone. I need to know you understand what this is, he said, without preamble. This isn't a love match. I'm not doing this because I want a wife. I'm doing this because walking away isn't an option. I know. My voice came out steadier than I felt. You don't have to explain. I do, actually. He crossed his arms. My father will expect certain things. Heirs, eventually. A functioning household. Public appearances where we look united. Can you handle that? Can you? I shot back, surprising myself. Because I'm not Clara. I'm not charming or beautiful or good at pretending everything's perfect. If that's what you needed, you should have chased her down. Something flickered in his expression. Anger, maybe, or respect. Hard to tell. I don't need charming. I need competent. Then we'll get along fine, because I am competent, probably more than your first choice. She wasn't my choice. She was my father's. Caleb moved to the window, staring out at the dusty street beyond. I met Clara exactly 4 times before the engagement. She talked the entire time, and I don't think she heard a single word I said. Marrying her would have been like living with a beautiful, expensive parrot. The description was so accurate, I almost laughed. She's not that bad. She ran off with a drifter rather than marry me. I think that speaks for itself. He turned back to me. What about you? Why are you actually agreeing to this? I could have lied. Should have, probably. Come up with something noble about family duty or saving the alliance. But something about the bluntness of this whole conversation made me want to be equally honest. Because nobody's ever chosen me for anything, I said. Not first, not second, not at all. And maybe you're only asking because you're angry and stubborn, but at least it's something. At least it's different from being invisible. Caleb studied me for a long moment. I'm not going to fall in love with you. Good, because I'm not going to fall in love with you either. We'll live separate lives. You'll run the household, I'll run the ranch and the business. We'll be civil in public and stay out of each other's way in private. Fine. And if you ever want out, if you meet someone else or decide this isn't working, we can discuss ending it quietly. That one surprised me. You'd let me go. I'm not going to keep someone who doesn't want to be kept. I've seen what that looks like. He didn't elaborate, but something in his tone suggested a story there. Do we have an agreement? I should have asked for more time. Should have thought about this. Talked to my parents. Considered literally any other option. But I was standing in a room surrounded by my sister's abandoned wedding decorations, listening to 300 people gossip about my family's disgrace. And this man was offering me a way out that didn't involve complete humiliation. So I held out my hand. We have an agreement. He shook it. His grip was different this time, still firm, but somehow more real, like he was actually seeing me instead of just looking through me. We should go back, he said, before they start making up their own explanations. Too late for that. He almost smiled. Almost. Fair point. When we opened the door, the noise hit us like a wave. The Reverend looked up hopefully. We're ready, Caleb said. Let's get this done. It happened fast after that. Caleb returned to his spot at the altar. Someone, my mother, I think, shoved a bouquet into my hands, the same one that was supposed to be Clara's. My father materialized at my side, looking shell-shocked. Eliza, he whispered as we walked toward the altar. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's not... Daddy. I stopped, made him look at me. When have I ever done anything you didn't want me to do? When have I ever caused a single problem or asked for anything or made any trouble at all? He blinked. Never. Right. So let me do this one thing. Let me fix this. His eyes got watery and he squeezed my hand so tight it hurt. You shouldn't have to fix your sister's mess. Maybe not, but someone has to, and I'm here. We started walking again. The aisle felt 1,000 miles long. Every face we passed held some variation of shock, pity, or barely concealed delight at the drama. I kept my eyes forward, on Caleb, who watched me approach with that same unreadable expression. When we reached the altar, my father placed my hand in Caleb's and stepped back. Caleb's fingers closed around mine, warm, steady, completely foreign. Reverend Matthews cleared his throat. He looked deeply uncomfortable, which honestly seemed fair. We are, gathered here today to witness the union of... He glanced down at his notes, crossed something out, and continued. Caleb Royce and Eliza Miller in holy matrimony. The ceremony blurred. I heard words about love and honor and commitment, all of which felt absurd under the circumstances. Caleb said his vows in a flat, mechanical tone. When it was my turn, my voice came out smaller than I wanted, but I got through it. Do you, Caleb Royce, take Eliza Miller to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. And do you, Eliza Miller, take Caleb Royce to be your lawfully wedded husband? I looked at this stranger I was about to marry. His dark eyes met mine, revealing nothing. This was insane. This was the worst decision I'd ever made. This was, I do. Then, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. The Reverend paused. You may kiss the bride. Caleb hesitated for half a second, then leaned in and pressed his lips to mine. It was brief, chaste, completely perfunctory, the kind of kiss you'd give your grandmother. But my first kiss nonetheless, and it happened in front of 300 people who were all trying to figure out what the hell they'd just witnessed. When he pulled back, there was a smattering of confused applause. Edmund Royce stood and started clapping with slow, deliberate precision, and everyone else followed suit because nobody wanted to offend him. We turned to face the crowd, and Caleb offered me his arm. I took it, and we walked back down the aisle as husband and wife. Married. Actually married. The reception was worse than the ceremony. It was held at the Royce's estate, a sprawling ranch house that made our property look like a shack. Someone had scrambled to change the name cards at the last minute, so half the tables still said Clara, and the other half had Eliza written in hasty, uneven letters. I spent 3 hours shaking hands with people who kept saying things like, "What a surprise," and "How brave of you," and "Well, this is certainly memorable." One woman actually patted my cheek and said, "Don't worry, dear, I'm sure he'll come to appreciate you eventually," like I was a stray dog he'd taken in out of pity. Caleb stayed by my side for exactly as long as protocol demanded, then disappeared to talk business with his father and several men I didn't recognize. I was left at a table with my mother and Caleb's mother, Virginia, who looked at me like I was a particularly disappointing piece of furniture. "You'll be living at Caleb's ranch," Virginia said. It wasn't a question. "It's about 40 miles west of here, quite isolated." "I'm used to isolated," I offered. "Yes, well, Claire was planning to redecorate extensively. I suppose you'll want to put your own touch on things." Her tone suggested she thought I had no touch to put on anything. My mother jumped in. "Eliza has excellent taste. She decorated our entire house." This was news to me, since Clara had actually done most of the decorating and I'd just hung the curtains she'd picked out. But I appreciated the attempt at support. "How lovely," Virginia said in a voice that meant the opposite. Caleb does prefer simplicity. Translation: don't touch anything. I nodded and sipped my champagne, which tasted expensive and made my head fuzzy. I wasn't used to drinking, wasn't used to any of this. Around 9 o'clock, Caleb reappeared at my side. "We should go." "Go where?" "Home. My ranch. Our ranch, I suppose." He said it like the concept was foreign. "It's a long drive, and I want to get back before midnight." Right. Because we were married now, and married people went home together, to the same house, the same bedroom. Oh no. My panic must have shown on my face because Caleb's expression shifted slightly. "There are 4 bedrooms. You can choose whichever one you want." The relief was so strong I almost sagged. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. I told you, separate lives." He held out his hand. Ready? I wasn't. But I took his hand anyway and let him lead me to a carriage that was significantly nicer than anything my family owned. Someone had tied ribbons to it, and there were flower petals scattered across the seats, decorations meant for Clara. My parents hugged me goodbye. My mother cried. My father told Caleb to take care of her in a voice that suggested threats would follow if he didn't. Then we were moving, the carriage rolling away from the estate, from the town, from everything I'd ever known. Caleb sat across from me, staring out the window at the darkening landscape. I did the same on my side. We didn't speak for the first hour. Finally, I couldn't stand the silence anymore. "Why did you really do it?" He didn't look at me. "I told you why." "You told me the practical reasons, but you could have walked away. Dealt with the embarrassment, found someone else later. Why force this?" For a long moment, I didn't think he'd answer. Then, "My father has controlled every aspect of my life since I was born. Where I went to school, what I studied, who I associated with, who I was supposed to marry, and I've gone along with all of it because he's usually right, and fighting him is exhausting." He finally turned to look at me. But standing there, watching him prepare to leave, to let your family humiliate us and just accept it, something snapped. I was tired of doing what he wanted, tired of being managed. So I made a choice that was mine, even if it was impulsive and probably stupid. "That's why I'm here? Because you were having a rebellion?" "Yes." He didn't apologize or try to soften it. Is that a problem? It should have been. Should have made me angry or hurt or something. But instead, I just felt oddly seen. Because I understood making choices for the wrong reasons, understood wanting to be something other than what everyone expected. "No," I said, "it's not a problem." We fell silent again, but it felt different this time, less hostile, more like 2 people who'd accidentally stumbled into the same disaster and were trying to figure out how to survive it. The ranch appeared around 11:30, materializing out of the darkness like something from a dream. It was bigger than I'd expected, a large main house, several outbuildings, corrals and stables spreading out in every direction. Lanterns flickered in a few windows, and I could hear horses moving in the barn. Caleb helped me down from the carriage, and we stood there for a moment looking at the house. The front door still had a wreath on it, flowers woven through the branches. Wedding decorations. For Clara. "I should take that down," Caleb said quietly. "Leave it. It's pretty." "It's not meant for you." "Nothing about today was meant for me. Doesn't mean it didn't happen." He looked at me strangely, then nodded. "Fair point." Inside, the house was beautiful, in that cold, unlived-in way some places are. Expensive furniture, perfect decorations, everything placed just so. It looked like a photograph in a magazine, lovely and completely lifeless. "Mrs. Chen is the housekeeper," Caleb said, gesturing to an older woman who'd appeared from somewhere in the back. "She'll show you around, help you get settled. If you need anything, ask her." "You're not?" I trailed off. "I have work to finish. I'll be in the study." He was already walking away. "Take whichever bedroom you want, except the one at the end of the hall. That's mine." And then he was gone, disappearing into a room off the main hallway and closing the door firmly behind him. Mrs. Chen smiled at me sympathetically. "It's been a long day, I imagine." "You have no idea. Come on, let me show you the house, and then you can rest. You look exhausted." She was kind, at least. Showed me the kitchen, the dining room, the parlor, and the 4 bedrooms upstairs. 3 were clearly guest rooms, nice but impersonal. The 4th, across the hall from Caleb's, was different, larger, more decorated. This had been meant to be Clara's room, I realized, the mistress's bedroom. "This one," I said, even though it felt like stepping into someone else's life. Mrs. Chen nodded like she'd expected that. "I'll have your things brought up. They arrived earlier today." "My things?" "Your father sent them over this afternoon. Dresses, books, personal items, everything you might need." Of course he had. Probably while I was at the reception, he'd packed up my entire room and shipped it here, erasing me from the Miller house like I'd never existed. Clara had run away and gotten a grand adventure with her drifter. I'd gotten married and been efficiently relocated. Mrs. Chen left me alone in the room that was supposed to be mine. I sat on the edge of the bed, massive, with a carved headboard and too many pillows, and tried to figure out what I was feeling. Scared, definitely. Overwhelmed. Exhausted. But also something else, something I couldn't quite name. Like I jumped off a cliff and was waiting to see if I'd fly or fall. There was a knock at the door. I tensed, but it was just Mrs. Chen again, carrying a tray with tea and small sandwiches. "I thought you might be hungry. You barely ate at the reception." "Thank you." I took the tray and she started to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "Mr. Royce is a good man. Difficult sometimes, and he works too much. But he's fair, honest. He'll treat you well, even if he's not warm about it." "That's reassuring, I think." She smiled. "Give it time. You might be surprised." After she left, I changed into my nightgown, plain white cotton, nothing like the fancy lace thing my mother had tried to give me for my wedding night, and climbed into bed. The sheets smelled like lavender and felt expensive. Everything in this house felt expensive. I should have been crying, should have been terrified or regretful or something. Instead, I just felt numb, like I'd used up all my emotions during the ceremony and had nothing left. Somewhere down the hall, I heard a door open and close. Footsteps. Then silence. I was married. To a stranger. Living in a house meant for someone else. Sleeping in a bed that should have been my sister's. This was my life now. I turned off the lamp and closed my eyes, and eventually, exhaustion dragged me under into dreams I wouldn't remember. The first morning, I woke to silence so complete it felt like the world had ended while I slept. No roosters crowing, no ranch hands shouting to each other, no sound of my mother moving around downstairs or Clara singing off-key in the next room. Just silence, thick and heavy, pressing down on me like a physical weight. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling and trying to remember where I was. The bed was too big, the room too unfamiliar, and when I finally turned my head, I saw a wedding dress draped over a chair, white silk and lace that I'd worn for exactly 4 hours before changing into travel clothes. Right. The wedding. Caleb. The ranch. My new life. I got dressed slowly, choosing one of the plain work dresses I'd brought from home. Most of my clothes were practical things. Clara had gotten all the fancy dresses, all the pretty things. I'd never minded before, but standing in this room full of expensive furniture and delicate decorations, I felt shabby, out of place. Downstairs, I found Mrs. Chen in the kitchen, kneading bread dough with efficient, practiced movements. She looked up when I entered and smiled. "Good morning, Mrs. Royce. Did you sleep well?" Mrs. Royce. The name felt wrong, like wearing someone else's shoes. "Well enough. Is my husband around?" He left at dawn, rode out to check the north pasture with the ranch hands. She wiped her hands on her apron. "He didn't want to wake you, said you'd had a long day yesterday." Of course he had. Separate lives, he'd said. Stay out of each other's way. Apparently that started immediately. What should I do? The question came out more helpless than I'd intended. I mean, what do people usually do here? Is there a schedule or routines or... Mrs. Chen's expression softened. Your sister-in-law used to sleep until noon when she visited, then spend the afternoon reading in the parlor. But I don't think that's your style, is it? No. I looked around the kitchen, taking in the well-organized shelves, the clean surfaces, the general air of efficiency. Do you need help with anything? Help? She looked surprised. Mrs. Royce, you don't need to... Please, I'll go crazy if I just sit around all day. I moved closer to the table. What else needs doing? She studied me for a moment, then pointed to a basket of vegetables. Those need washing and chopping for tonight's stew, but really you should... I was already rolling up my sleeves. Show me where things go. We worked in comfortable silence for a while. She taught me where everything was kept, how Caleb liked his meals, what supplies needed ordering from town. It felt good to have something to do, some purpose beyond sitting in a fancy room feeling sorry for myself. He's not a bad man, Mrs. Chen said after a while, her voice quiet. Mr. Royce, I know yesterday was unusual, but he's fair, and he works hard, and he doesn't ask for much. Just a wife who stays out of his way? She winced. He's been alone for a long time. His mother visits twice a year and criticizes everything. His father runs his life from Denver. I think he's gotten used to keeping people at a distance. Well, he married the right person then. I'm very good at being distant. I chopped carrots with more force than necessary. Or invisible. I'm excellent at invisible. I don't think you're as invisible as you think. Before I could ask what she meant, the kitchen door swung open and Caleb walked in, covered in dust and looking tired. He stopped when he saw me, clearly not expecting to find me there. You're up early, he said. It's past 9. For a woman who just got married, that's early. He moved to the sink, washing his hands. Most brides sleep in. I'm not most brides. No, I'm starting to see that. He dried his hands on a towel, glanced at the vegetables I'd been chopping. You don't have to work in the kitchen. Mrs. Chen said the same thing, but I don't know what else to do with myself, and sitting around makes me anxious. I set down the knife. Unless you'd prefer I stay upstairs and out of the way. Something flickered in his expression. Annoyance, maybe, or frustration. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Separate lives, remember? You made that very clear. I did. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. But that doesn't mean you have to hide in your room. This is your house too now. Do whatever you want. Within reason? Within reason, he agreed. Then after a pause, what would you normally be doing at home right now? Working. My father's books are a disaster. He's good with cattle, but terrible with numbers. I usually spend mornings fixing whatever mess he'd made the week before. I shrugged. Then I'd help with inventory, check supply orders, make sure the ranch hands got paid on time. Normal things. Caleb's expression shifted to something like interest. You managed the finances? Someone had to. Clara certainly wasn't going to do it. Can you look at something? He disappeared into the hallway and returned with a ledger, thick and worn. My books. I've been meaning to organize them properly, but I never have time, and the last accountant I hired was either incompetent or stealing from me. Probably both. I took the ledger, flipped it open, and immediately saw the problem. Numbers didn't add up. Expenses were listed in the wrong columns. Entire months seemed to be missing entries. It was a mess. This is bad, I said. I know. No, I mean, this is really bad. You're losing money and you don't even know where it's going. I ran my finger down a column of numbers. See this? Someone's been skimming. Not much each time, but it adds up. And here, you paid twice for the same supply delivery, and this entire section is just wrong. All of it. Caleb moved closer, looking over my shoulder. Can you fix it? Maybe. It'll take time to untangle everything. I looked up at him. Did you want me to try? Yes. No hesitation. If you can make sense of this, you'd be doing me a significant favor. It wasn't exactly a declaration of appreciation, but it was something, a purpose, a way to be useful instead of just existing in this house like a piece of decorative furniture. I'll need a desk, I said, and proper light, and access to all your financial records, invoices, receipts, everything. There's an office upstairs next to my bedroom. It's mostly storage right now, but we can clear it out. He paused. If you actually fix this mess, I'll owe you. You already owe me. You married me to prove a point to your father. His mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Fair enough. That became my routine. Mornings in the kitchen with Mrs. Chen, learning how the household ran. Afternoons in the office, which we'd cleared out and set up with a proper desk, good light, and stacks of ledgers and papers that made my head hurt. Evenings alone in my room, reading or writing letters home that I never sent because I didn't know what to say. Caleb and I existed around each other like roommates who happened to share a last name. He'd come in from the ranch, eat dinner, mostly in silence, then disappear into his study or his room. Sometimes I'd hear him moving around late at night, restless. Sometimes I'd pass him in the hallway and we'd nod at each other like polite strangers. It was exactly what he'd promised. Separate lives, civil, distant. It was also desperately lonely. 3 weeks in, I found the first major discrepancy in the books. Someone had been systematically stealing from Caleb for at least 2 years, and the amounts were significant. Thousands of dollars siphoned off through fake invoices and inflated costs. I brought the evidence to him one evening after dinner. He was in his study, going over contracts, and looked up when I knocked. I found something, I said, spreading the papers across his desk. Your former accountant was definitely stealing. Look, every supply order was marked up by 15%, and that money went somewhere, not to the suppliers, not into operating costs. Just gone. Caleb studied the numbers, his expression growing darker. That son of a bitch. I trusted him. He knew you were too busy to check his work, made himself indispensable, then robbed you blind. I pointed to another column. And it's not just him. You've got a ranch hand who's been claiming overtime he never worked. And someone's been selling your cattle on the side, small numbers, but enough that it adds up. How much total? Best estimate? Around $12,000 over 2 years. He went very still. $12,000. Give or take. Some of the records are too messy to be certain, but it's in that range. I sat down across from him. The accountant's in Denver now, according to Mrs. Chen. The ranch hand is still here, Jack Morrison. And I think your cattle foreman might be involved in the livestock scheme, but I need more evidence. Caleb leaned back in his chair, scrubbing a hand over his face. I've been bleeding money for years and didn't even notice. You've been busy and trusting the wrong people. Clearly. He looked at the papers again, then at me. How did you figure this out? Numbers don't lie. People do, but numbers don't. Once you know what to look for, it's obvious. I gathered the evidence back into a neat stack. What do you want to do about it? Fire Morrison tomorrow. Have the sheriff investigate the accountant. He paused. And hire you, apparently. You're already stuck with me. No need to pay extra. I'm serious. This is significant work, and you're good at it. He pulled out a different ledger, his personal accounts, I realized. What's fair compensation for this kind of thing? Caleb, I don't need... Yes, you do. Everyone needs their own money. Independence. He wrote something down. Would $50 a month be acceptable? I blinked. That was more than most ranch hands made. That's too much. It's what I'd pay a competent accountant. You're doing the same work. He signed something with a flourish. Consider it done. It was strange sitting in his study making business arrangements like colleagues instead of a married couple, but it felt right somehow. Honest. We weren't pretending to be something we weren't. Thank you, I said quietly. Don't thank me. You earned it. He closed the ledger. Was there anything else? Actually, yes. Your supply costs are too high across the board. You're ordering from vendors in Denver when there are cheaper options closer, and your staffing is inefficient. You've got 3 people doing jobs that 2 could handle, and nobody's doing the things that actually need attention. His eyebrows rose. You figured that out in 3 weeks? It's not that complicated. You just have to look at the numbers objectively. I hesitated, then pushed forward. If you'd let me, I could restructure things, cut costs, improve efficiency, recover some of what you lost. How much could you save? Hard to say without implementing changes, but conservatively, maybe 30% of your operating costs. More if we're aggressive about it. Caleb was quiet for the long moment, studying me with that intense focus he got sometimes. My father chose Clara because she was beautiful and charming and would make me look good at social events. I know. He's going to lose his mind when he finds out I married someone actually useful instead. That surprised a laugh out of me. Is that a yes? That's a yes. Fix whatever needs fixing. He stood, held out his hand. Partners? I shook it. His grip was warm, familiar now, after weeks of polite nods and distant courtesy. Partners. After that, things shifted. Not dramatically. We still lived separate lives, still kept our distance. But there was a purpose now, a shared goal. I'd spend hours in the office, reorganizing systems and tracking down inefficiencies. Caleb would come in after working the ranch, and we'd discuss changes, argue about priorities, make decisions together. He was sharp, I'd give him that. And he actually listened when I talked, which was more than my father had ever done. When I suggested switching suppliers, he didn't dismiss it. He asked questions, wanted evidence, then implemented the change when I proved it would save money. When I recommended firing 2 ranch hands who were more trouble than they were worth, he did it the next day. We fell into a rhythm. Working separately during the day, reviewing everything together in the evening. It wasn't friendship exactly, but it was something, a mutual respect that hadn't been there before. You're wasted on household management, Caleb said one night, almost 6 weeks after the wedding. We were in his study, reviewing the month's numbers. You should be running businesses, not organizing kitchens. Women don't run businesses. Some do. And you're better at this than most men I know. He gestured at the neat columns of figures I'd prepared. You've saved me $4,000 in 6 weeks. That's not luck or accident, that's skill. I felt my face heat. Compliments made me uncomfortable. I wasn't used to them. I just fixed obvious problems. They were obvious to you. Nobody else caught them. He leaned back in his chair. My father's coming to visit next week. My stomach dropped. Why? To see how we're doing. Make sure I haven't made a complete disaster of this marriage. His tone was dry. He'll expect certain things. A proper wife, a well-run household, evidence that this arrangement is working. Will he be disappointed? Probably. He usually is. Caleb paused. But I want to show him the financial improvements, the changes you've made. If he's going to criticize this marriage, he should at least see what he's criticizing. You want to tell him I've been doing the books? I want to tell him I married someone competent instead of decorative. Let him choke on it. There was an edge to his voice, old resentment, deep and bitter. Whatever relationship he had with his father, it wasn't healthy. What if he tries to end the marriage? I asked. He has lawyers, connections. If he decides this was a mistake, he can try. But the marriage is legal and I'm not dissolving it just because he's unhappy. Caleb met my eyes. Unless you want out. That offer still stands. Do you want out? No. No hesitation. This is working. Better than I expected, honestly. You've made yourself indispensable. It wasn't exactly a romantic declaration, but it settled something in my chest. This strange arrangement we'd fallen into, it mattered. I mattered. Not as a replacement for Clara, not as a convenient solution to a problem. As myself. Then we'll deal with your father together, I said. Edmund Royce arrived on a Tuesday, accompanied by 2 lawyers and enough luggage for a month-long stay. I watched from an upstairs window as they unloaded, my stomach tight with anxiety. He's here to intimidate you, Caleb had said that morning. Don't let him. He respects strength, nothing else. Easy for him to say. He'd grown up with this man. I was just the wrong daughter who'd accidentally ended up married to his son. I went downstairs as they entered, wearing my best dress, which still wasn't very impressive, and tried to look like I belonged there. Edmund spotted me immediately. Eliza, you look well. Thank you, Mr. Royce. Edmund, please. We're family now. He said it without warmth. Where's my son? Out with the ranch hands. He'll be back for dinner. Of course he will. Work always comes first with Caleb. Edmund moved into the parlor like he owned it, which technically he kind of did. He'd bought this ranch for Caleb 5 years ago. We need to talk, you and I. My throat went dry. About what? About this marriage. Sit down. I sat. He didn't, just stood there looking down at me with those cold, calculating eyes that Caleb had inherited. I won't pretend this union was what anyone wanted, he said. My son married you out of spite, and you married him out of, what, desperation? Duty? Does it matter? It does if this marriage is a sham. I won't have the Royce name attached to something fraudulent. He paced, hands behind his back. I've spoken with my lawyers. There are ways to end this quietly. An annulment, perhaps, or a divorce handled discreetly. You'd be compensated, of course. Enough to start over somewhere else. You want to buy me off. I want to fix a mistake before it causes more damage. He stopped pacing, fixed me with that intense stare. Be honest. Are you happy here? Really happy? Or are you just making the best of a bad situation? The question caught me off guard because I didn't know the answer. Was I happy? I wasn't miserable. I had purpose, work that mattered, a husband who respected me even if he didn't love me. That was more than I'd had before. But happy? I didn't know what that would even feel like. What I am or aren't isn't your concern, I said finally. This is between Caleb and me. Everything involving my son is my concern. Not anymore. He made his choice. You can accept it or not, but you can't change it. Edmund's eyes narrowed. You're bolder than I expected. Because I'm not Clara? Because I'm not pretty and charming and easy to manipulate? Because you're not intimidated. Most people are. He sat down across from me. Show me what you've been doing here. Caleb mentioned you've made improvements. The subject changed through me, but I recovered quickly. To the finances, yes. The household was running inefficiently, and someone had been stealing. I know about the theft. Caleb wrote to me. Edmund's expression remained neutral. I want to see your work, the actual numbers. So I showed him. Brought out the ledgers, the reorganized accounts, the evidence of savings and recovered funds. He went through everything with excruciating attention to detail, asking sharp questions, challenging my calculations. It felt like an exam I hadn't studied for. But the numbers held up. They always did. 4,000 in 6 weeks, he said finally. Impressive. Thank you. Thank God. Don't thank me. I haven't complimented you. He closed the ledger. But this is competent work. More than competent. Where did you learn accounting? Necessity. Someone had to manage my father's books. And he let you? That's unusual. He didn't have much choice. Clara couldn't add 2 numbers together, and he was drowning in debt. I met Edmund's gaze. I'm good at fixing things other people break. It's basically all I do. Something shifted in his expression. Not approval exactly, but recognition. Like he was seeing me properly for the first time. My son didn't marry the woman I chose for him, he said slowly. He married a woman with a brain instead. I'm not sure if that's better or worse. For him or for you? Both. He stood. I'll be staying for a week. I want to see how this household actually runs, meet your staff, review your systems. If you're lying about any of this, I'm not. We'll see. He left me sitting there, hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline. That could have gone worse. Could have gone better too, but at least he hadn't immediately called his lawyers. Caleb found me an hour later, still in the parlor, staring at nothing. That bad? He asked. I don't know. He wants to stay for a week, evaluate everything. I looked up at him. He offered me money to leave. Caleb's expression went dark. He what? Said he'd compensate me for a quiet divorce. Make the problem go away. I twisted my hands together. I told him no. You could have said yes, taken the money, started over. He sat down beside me. Why didn't you? Because leaving would mean going back to being invisible. Because this strange, distant marriage was still better than the life I'd left behind. Because somewhere in the past 6 weeks, I'd started to build something here, and I wasn't ready to give it up. But I didn't say any of that just because we had a deal. Right, the deal. He was quiet for a moment. My father's going to make this week hell. He'll criticize everything, question every decision, try to find proof that this marriage is failing. Then we don't give him proof. How? I thought about it, about what Edmund Royce would be looking for. Evidence of dysfunction, discord, a marriage of convenience falling apart. He'd want to see us failing so he could justify ending it. We show him exactly what this is, I said. A partnership. Not a love match, but something that works. Something profitable. I stood up. You said he respects strength, so we show him strength. Caleb looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, let's give him a show. The week was exactly as terrible as promised. Edmund watched everything. How we ran the household, how we interacted, how we made decisions. He questioned Mrs. Chen about her duties, interviewed ranch hands about their work, and went through every single financial record I'd organized. But he couldn't find fault with the results. The ranch was running better than it had in years. Costs were down, efficiency was up, and the staff actually seemed content instead of stressed and overworked. Caleb and I presented a united front. We discussed business decisions together, backed each other up in conversations, showed Edmund that this marriage might not be conventional, but it functioned. On the fifth night, Edmund joined us for dinner, actually sat down at the table instead of eating separately like he had been. He cut his steak methodically, chewing in silence, while Caleb and I made careful small talk. You've surprised me, Eliza, Edmund said finally. How so? I expected incompetence, desperation, a girl in over her head clinging to my son because she had no other options. He took a sip of wine. Instead, I find someone who's actually contributing, making improvements, running this ranch better than my son was. I'm sitting right here, Caleb said dryly. I know, that's why I said it. Edmund's gaze moved between us. This isn't what I wanted for you, Caleb. You know that. But I can't argue with results. Does that mean you're done trying to end this marriage? It means I'm reconsidering my position. Edmund set down his glass. You two have built something here. Not what I would have chosen, but something functional. Abandoning it would be wasteful. It wasn't approval, but it wasn't rejection either. Coming from Edmund Royce, that was probably the closest we'd get to a blessing. After he left, taking his lawyers and his intimidation tactics back to Denver, the house felt different, lighter. Like we'd passed some test we hadn't known we were taking. That went better than expected, Caleb said. We were in his study reviewing the week's work. He didn't disown you or drag me to court. I'd call that a win. More than a win, he actually acknowledged you're good at this. Caleb paused. Thank you for handling him. We handled him, together. Right. He looked at me then, really looked, and something in his expression was different, softer. This is working, isn't it, this arrangement we have? Yes. And it was true. We'd built something here in these past 2 months, not romance or passion, but respect, partnership, a marriage that functioned on its own strange terms. Good, Caleb said quietly. I'm glad you stayed. It was the closest he'd come to saying he wanted me here. Not needed, wanted. The distinction mattered. That night, I went to bed feeling something I hadn't felt since before the wedding. Not happiness exactly, but something adjacent to it. Contentment, maybe. The sense that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The contentment lasted exactly 3 months before Clara came back. I was in the garden when Mrs. Chen found me, her face pale and pinched in a way that immediately set off alarms. I'd been planting herbs, something to do with my hands during the rare moments I wasn't buried in ledgers or supply orders. There's someone here to see you, Mrs. Chen said, twisting her apron in her hands. I tried to send her away, but she insisted. Who? But I knew before she answered. I could see it in the way she couldn't quite meet my eyes. Your sister. The trowel fell from my hands, landing in the dirt with a soft thud. Clara's here? In the parlor. She arrived 10 minutes ago in a very expensive carriage. Mrs. Chen's voice dropped. She's dressed like she married royalty instead of running off with a drifter. I should have stayed in the garden. Should have told Mrs. Chen to make her leave, to tell Clara I wasn't home or wasn't interested or any of the 100 lies that would have protected me from whatever was about to happen. Instead, I wiped the dirt from my hands and walked inside. Clara was standing by the window examining one of the decorative vases I'd chosen last month. She looked exactly like I remembered, beautiful, polished, perfectly put together. Her dress probably cost more than everything in my wardrobe combined, and her hair was arranged in an elaborate style I'd never have the patience for. She turned when she heard me enter, and her face lit up with that brilliant smile that had always made people forgive her for anything. "Ellie!" She rushed forward like we were the best of friends, like she hadn't destroyed my life and disappeared. "Look at you! Marriage agrees with you. You look so domestic." It wasn't a compliment. Nothing Clara said ever was. Not really. There was always an edge hidden underneath, sharp enough to draw blood if you weren't careful. "What are you doing here, Clara? Can't a sister visit? I've missed you." She sat down on the sofa, arranging her skirts carefully. "This is a lovely house. Smaller than I expected, but charming, very rustic." I stayed standing. "Where's Jackson?" "Oh, we're not together anymore. That was just a silly infatuation." She waved her hand dismissively. "Turns out drifters aren't very interesting once you actually spend time with them. Who knew?" "So you left him?" "He left me, technically. Found some saloon girl in Wyoming and decided she was more his type." Clara's smile never wavered. "But it all worked out. I met someone much better, Richard Blackwell. His family owns half of Colorado. We're engaged." Of course she was. Clara always landed on her feet, always found someone to catch her when she jumped. "That's wonderful," I said, meaning none of it. "I'm happy for you." "Are you? You don't sound happy. You sound tired." She patted the sofa beside her. "Sit down, Ellie. Let's talk properly." Against my better judgment, I sat. Clara immediately took my hand, examining it like I was a curiosity. "Your hands are rough. You've been working." She made it sound like a disease. "Why are you working? You married Caleb Royce. You should have servants for everything." "I like working." "No one likes working. You're just saying that because you don't know any better." She squeezed my hand. "Poor Ellie. Always settling for scraps while I get the feast. It must be exhausting." There it was. The knife slipped in so smoothly, I almost missed it. "I'm fine, Clara." "Are you? Really?" She leaned closer, her voice dropping to something that might have sounded like concern if you didn't know her. "Because I heard what happened. How you had to step in and save the day because I ran off. How Caleb married you because he was angry, not because he actually wanted you. That must hurt." "It doesn't." "Of course it does. You've always been second choice, Ellie. Second daughter, second best, second everything. And now you're second wife to a man who was supposed to marry me." Her eyes glittered. "Do you really think he doesn't compare you to me every single day?" I pulled my hand away. "You should leave. I'm just trying to help." "Someone needs to tell you the truth." She stood, smoothing her dress. "You're living in a house that was supposed to be mine, married to a man who wanted me. Every time he looks at you, he's seeing what he lost. Do you really think you can compete with that?" "I'm not competing with anyone." "Oh, sweetie, you've been competing with me your whole life. You've just always lost." She moved toward the door, then paused. "I'll be in town for a few weeks. Richard's family has business here. We should have dinner, the four of us. It would be good for Caleb to see what he missed out on." Then she was gone, leaving behind the scent of expensive perfume and the kind of damage that wouldn't show until later, when I was alone and the words had time to sink in properly. I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. Mrs. Chen appeared eventually, bringing tea I didn't want. "Are you all right?" she asked gently. "Fine." "Mrs. Royce, Liza, you know she's trying to hurt you, don't you? Everything she said was designed to I know." And I did know. But knowing something and not being affected by it were different things entirely. That night, Caleb came home late from a meeting with potential buyers in town. I heard him moving around downstairs, heard Mrs. Chen's low voice telling him something, probably about Clara's visit. Then footsteps on the stairs, a knock on my door. "Can we talk?" he asked through the wood. I thought about pretending to be asleep, but that felt cowardly. "Come in." He entered, still in his work clothes, looking tired and frustrated. "Mrs. Chen said your sister was here." "Yes." "What did she want?" "To remind me that I'm not you." The words came out sharper than I'd intended. "To make sure I know this was supposed to be her life, her house, her marriage, that I'm just filling a space meant for someone better." Caleb's expression darkened. "That's not, isn't it?" I stood up, suddenly too restless to sit. "Be honest, Caleb. When you look at me, Do you see me, or do you see the sister who wasn't good enough, the replacement you settled for because your pride wouldn't let you walk away? Where is this coming from? From 3 months of pretending this is normal, that we're partners and equals and everything's fine. I laughed, and it sounded wrong. But it's not fine. It's never been fine. You married me to spite your father and save face. I married you because I was desperate for anything that wasn't being invisible. Neither of us chose this because we wanted each other. No, we didn't. He said it quietly without flinching. But that doesn't mean it hasn't become something real. Real how? We work together. We're civil. We've built a functional business arrangement. I met his eyes. But that's all it is. An arrangement. And Clara's right. I am second choice. I'm always going to be second choice. Clara's a liar who can't stand seeing you happy. I'm not happy. The words hung between us, loud in the quiet room. I hadn't meant to say it, hadn't realized it was true until it came out of my mouth. Caleb looked like I'd hit him. I thought, you said this was working. The business is working. The household is working. We're successful partners. My voice cracked. But I sleep alone every night in a room that was supposed to be hers, in a house decorated for her, married to a man who speaks to me like a colleague and looks at me like I'm a balance sheet that finally adds up. That's not a marriage, Caleb. That's just organized loneliness. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. What do you want me to say? I don't know. Something true, maybe. You want truth? Fine. He moved closer, and I could see the frustration in his eyes. You're right. I didn't choose you. I chose defiance, and you happened to be available. That's the truth. But it's also true that you've become the most important part of my day, that I look forward to our evening meetings because you're the only person who talks to me like I'm more than my last name or my father's money, that this house felt empty before you were in it, and now I can't imagine it without you. I opened my mouth, closed it. He wasn't done. And yes, Clara was supposed to live here, but she would have hated it, hated the isolation, hated the work, hated me for not being exciting enough. You don't hate any of it. You've made this place better, made my life better, and I'm not comparing you to her because there is no comparison. She's all surface. You're real. Caleb, I know this isn't what you wanted. I know I'm not what you wanted. But don't let your sister poison what we've built just because it doesn't look like some fairy tale. He stepped back. If you want to leave, I meant what I said before. I won't stop you. But don't leave because Clara made you feel small. She's been doing that to you your whole life. Don't give her that power anymore. Then he left, closing the door quietly behind him, and I was alone with his words echoing in my head. I didn't sleep that night. Just lay there, replaying the conversation, trying to untangle what I actually felt from what Clara had made me feel. Because she had gotten in my head, just like she always did. Made me doubt everything, made me feel inadequate and small and second best. But was she wrong? I thought about the past 3 months, the way Caleb and I had built something together, the respect that had grown between us. The way he listened when I talked, trusted my judgment, treated me like an equal. That wasn't nothing. That was more than I'd ever had before. But it also wasn't love. Wasn't romance or passion or any of the things marriages were supposed to have. We were partners, colleagues, two people making the best of an awkward situation. Was that enough? Could it be enough? I still didn't have an answer when morning came. The next week was strained. Caleb and I were polite to each other, professional, but the easy rhythm we'd developed felt broken. We didn't have our evening meetings in his study. We ate dinner in silence. We existed in the same space but felt miles apart, and Clara kept showing up. Not at the house. Even she wasn't bold enough for that after the first visit. But I saw her in town when I went for supplies. Saw her at church on Sunday, beautiful and radiant in a dress that probably cost more than our monthly household budget. Saw her with her new fiancé, Richard Blackwell, who was handsome and charming and everything Caleb wasn't. She made sure I saw them together. Made sure I noticed how he looked at her, how he touched her hand, how he laughed at her jokes. This is what real love looks like, her smile seemed to say. This is what you're missing. I tried to ignore it, tried to focus on work, on the ranch, on anything else, but it wore on me like water on stone, steady and relentless. Mrs. Chen noticed. You need to talk to Mr. Royce, she said one afternoon. We were in the kitchen, and I'd been staring at the same pot of soup for 10 minutes without actually seeing it. About what? About whatever's eating at you, about your sister, about the fact that you're both miserable and too stubborn to admit it. We're not miserable. We're fine. You're lying to yourself, and it's painful to watch. She took the spoon from my hand. Marriage isn't supposed to be easy, but it's not supposed to be this hard either. Talk to him. But I didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to explain that I was terrified I'd invested 3 months in building something that would never be more than a business arrangement. That I was starting to want things I'd promised myself I didn't need. That I was starting to fall for my own husband, and he'd made it very clear he wasn't looking for that. 2 weeks after Clara's first visit, Edmund Royce returned. No warning, no courtesy letter, just showed up with his lawyers and an expression that promised trouble. Caleb and I were in the office when Mrs. Chen announced him. We exchanged a look, the first real connection we'd had in days. "This can't be good," I said. "No, it really can't." Caleb stood. "Let me handle this." But I followed him downstairs anyway, because whatever this was, we were facing it together. That's what partners did. Edmund was in the parlor, looking around like he was cataloging everything for auction. When we entered, he didn't waste time on pleasantries. "I need to speak with my son, privately." "Anything you need to say, you can say in front of my wife," Caleb said. "I don't think—" "I wasn't asking." There was steel in Caleb's voice I'd rarely heard. "What's this about?" Edmund's jaw tightened, but he pulled out some papers from his briefcase. "I've been contacted by the Miller family. They're claiming this marriage was entered into under false pretenses and should be annulled." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Your father believes Eliza was coerced into this union, that you took advantage of a desperate situation to secure a bride when the original arrangement fell through." Edmund's gaze moved to me. "He's prepared to file legal action to dissolve the marriage and return his daughter home." "That's insane," Caleb said. "Eliza agreed of her own free will." "Did she? Or did she feel obligated to save her family from humiliation?" Edmund spread the papers on the table. "The legal argument is actually quite strong. A marriage entered into under duress can be annulled. And given the circumstances, the rushed ceremony, the public nature of the decision, the fact that you barely knew each other, a judge might agree that proper consent wasn't given." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My father was doing this? Why? "There's more," Edmund continued. "I've received separate communication from Thomas Miller. He's offering a deal. If we agree to the annulment quietly, he'll return the full amount of the merger funds we provided, plus interest. He's even offered to arrange a marriage between our family and another prominent ranching family, the Harrisons. Their daughter is younger than Clara, well-educated, and comes with significant land holdings." "No," Caleb said immediately. "Think about this, son. The Harrison connection would be far more valuable than the Miller alliance ever was. You'd have access to their territory, their resources, their political connections." Edmund's voice took on that persuasive tone he used when closing business deals. "And you'd be free to marry someone you actually chose, instead of being stuck with a substitute bride you took out of spite." The words hit like physical blows. Substitute bride. Stuck with. "She's not a substitute," Caleb started, but Edmund cut him off. "Of course she is. Everyone knows it. The entire territory knows you married Clara's sister because you were angry and stubborn." He looked at me directly. "No offense intended, Eliza, but surely you see this is an opportunity for everyone. You can go home, find someone who actually wants you, start fresh without this hanging over your head." "I don't want to go home," I said, my voice small. "Your father seems to think differently. In fact, he's quite insistent." Edmund pulled out another document. "There's also the matter of impropriety. Several people have reported seeing your sister Clara in town recently, visiting your husband's place of business, spending time in his company without proper supervision." My head snapped up. "What?" "It's nothing," Caleb said quickly. "She showed up at the land office last week when I was filing paperwork. We spoke for maybe 5 minutes. 5 minutes is enough for rumors, and there are other reports of you two seen together at various locations around town." Edmund's expression was neutral, but his words were poisonous. People are starting to wonder if perhaps Caleb married the wrong sister, but is correcting that mistake in other ways. "That's disgusting," I breathed. "You're implying—" "I'm implying nothing. I'm reporting what others are saying." Edmund gathered his papers. "The point is, this marriage has become complicated, legally questionable, socially awkward, and possibly scandalous. Ending it now, while we can do so quietly and profitably, is the smart choice." "I don't care about smart," Caleb said. I'm not ending this marriage. Even if it means losing everything? Edmund's voice went hard. Because that's what I'm prepared to do, Caleb. If you insist on keeping this girl against her own father's wishes, against common sense, against your own best interests, then I will cut you off. No more funding, no more support, no more inheritance. You'll have this ranch and nothing else. The silence that followed was suffocating. Caleb had gone very still. You'd actually do that? To save you from yourself? Yes. Edmund's expression softened slightly. Son, I understand you're trying to prove something. But this has gone far enough. Let the girl go home, take the Harrison deal, build the life you were meant to have, not this compromise. It's not a compromise, it's my marriage. It's a mistake. Edmund stood. I'm staying at the hotel in town. You have until tomorrow evening to make a decision. Sign the annulment papers, accept the Harrison proposal, and everything goes back to normal. Refuse, and you're on your own. He moved toward the door, then stopped. And Eliza? Your father is waiting for my answer. If Caleb won't agree to the annulment, your father is prepared to take more aggressive legal action. He has lawyers in Denver who specialize in these matters. Then he was gone, leaving the annulment papers on the table like a grenade with the pin pulled. Caleb and I stood there, not looking at each other, the weight of Edmund's ultimatum crushing down on us. I should leave, I said finally. No. Caleb, he's offering you everything. The Harrison connection, your inheritance, freedom from this mess. I don't want any of it. You're not thinking clearly. You're angry at your father, and that's making you... I'm thinking perfectly clearly. He turned to me, and his eyes were fierce. He's asking me to choose between his money and you. That's not a hard choice. It should be. Any rational person would. I don't care what rational people would do. I care that he walked in here and talked about you like you're some business problem to be solved. Like dissolving our marriage is just another transaction. His hands clenched into fists. You're not a transaction. You're my wife. I'm the wife you never wanted. That's not true anymore. He said it quietly, like the words cost him something. Maybe it was true 3 months ago, but it's not now. I wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly it physically hurt. But Clara's words kept echoing in my head, mixing with Edmund's cold calculations and my father's apparent determination to drag me home. What if they're right? I whispered. What if this is all just stubbornness? Pride? What if we're destroying your future for something that isn't even real? It's real to me. But is it enough? I gestured at the papers on the table. Your father's offering you the world, Caleb. Land, money, power, a wife from a better family, everything you're supposed to want. And I'm offering you what? Competent bookkeeping? A functional household? That's not worth losing everything for. You're worth it. How do you know? We barely know each other. We've never even... I stopped, but he knew what I meant. Had a real marriage? He moved closer. Is that what you want? Romance? Passion? All the things I told you this would never be? I don't know what I want. That's the problem. My voice broke. Clara was right. I've spent my whole life being second best, and now I'm supposed to believe that you choose me over everything. That doesn't make sense. People don't choose me. They settle for me when their first choice doesn't work out. I'm not settling. Then what are you doing? Fighting for something that matters. His voice rose, frustration breaking through. For the first time in my life, I'm fighting for something I actually chose, something that's mine, not my father's plan or some business arrangement. I'm fighting for you. The words hung in the air between us, raw and honest and terrifying. You can't, I said. You'll lose everything. Then I'll lose everything. He reached for my hand and I let him take it. But I'm not losing you, not to my father's manipulations, not to your sister's poison, not to lawyers or annulments or whatever else they throw at us. If you want to leave because you genuinely don't want this marriage, fine. But don't leave because they're telling you that you should. I looked down at our joined hands. His grip was warm, solid, real. What if I can't be what you need? You already are. You don't know that. You don't really know me. Then let me learn. Let me try. He squeezed my hand gently. I know I'm not good at this. I know I've kept you at a distance, treated this like a business arrangement instead of a marriage. But that's because I'm scared too, of failing, of making my father right, of wanting something and having it taken away. It was the most honest he'd ever been with me. the most vulnerable. And standing there looking at this man who was willing to give up everything for a marriage he hadn't wanted 3 months ago, I felt something shift in my chest. Maybe it was enough. Maybe imperfect and complicated and born from all the wrong reasons could still become something real. "I don't want to leave," I said quietly. "Then don't." "But your father—" "We'll get over it or won't. Either way, that's his problem." Caleb pulled me closer, and for the first time since the wedding, we were standing close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, smell the scent of leather and soap that clung to his clothes. "I'm not giving you up, Eliza. Not for money, not for land, not for anything. You're mine, and I'm keeping you." It should have sounded possessive, maybe even aggressive, but instead it sounded like a promise, like something I could hold on to when everything else was falling apart. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay? We'll fight, together." I looked up at him, and for the first time, I let myself really see him. Not as the stranger who'd married me out of spite, not as the business partner who valued my skills. As someone who was choosing me, really choosing me, when he could have everything else. "Together," he agreed. Then, for the second time since we'd met, he kissed me. But this one was different from the perfunctory press of lips at the altar. This one was real, honest, a promise, and a question all at once. When he pulled back, we were both breathing hard. "We should prepare," I said, trying to regain some equilibrium. "If your father's serious about cutting you off, we need to know exactly where we stand financially." Always practical. Someone has to be. But I was smiling, and so was he, and something had changed between us. Something that felt like the beginning of something neither of us had planned for, but both of us needed. We spent that evening going through every account, every asset, every resource we had. If Edmund followed through on his threat, we'd lose a significant portion of our operating capital. We'd have to scale back, make hard choices, possibly sell assets to stay afloat. But we'd survive. We had built something functional, something that could stand on its own, even without the Royce family fortune backing it. "We can do this," I said, looking at the final numbers. "We can do this," Caleb agreed. What we didn't know was that Clara had one more move to make, and it would be the one that nearly destroyed everything. The letter arrived 3 days later, delivered by a courier who looked uncomfortable handing it over. It was addressed to me in my father's handwriting, and my hands shook as I opened it. The words were formal, almost legal in their precision. He was filing for annulment on my behalf, claiming I'd been coerced into marriage under duress. He'd hired lawyers from Denver, the best money could buy, and they were confident they could dissolve the union within weeks. He expected me home by the end of the month. There was no warmth in it, no concern for what I actually wanted, just commands dressed up as paternal care. I was still staring at the letter when Caleb found me in the office. The paper crumpled in my fist. "What is it?" he asked, then saw my face. "What happened?" I handed him the letter without speaking, watched his expression darken as he read. "He can't do this," Caleb said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You're an adult. You made your own choice." "Did I?" The question came out bitter. "Or did I just do what everyone expected? Step in and fix Clara's mess, save the family from humiliation, be the good daughter who never causes problems? You told me you wanted this." "I did. I do." I pressed my palms against the desk. "But that doesn't mean they won't try to take it away. My father has money, connections, lawyers who specialize in exactly this kind of case, and your father's backing him because he wants you married to someone from a better family." The Harrisons aren't a better family. They're richer, more connected. Their daughter didn't run off with a drifter or cause any scandals. I looked up at him. "On paper, this is a terrible match, a rushed marriage to the wrong sister, entered into under questionable circumstances. Any judge looking at this is going to see what they want us to see, a mistake that needs correcting." Caleb set the letter down carefully, like it might explode. "Then we fight it. We get our own lawyers. With what money? If your father cuts you off like he threatened, we can't afford the kind of legal battle this will become." I stood up, pacing. "And even if we could, what happens to the ranch while we're fighting? Who's going to run things while we're stuck in court for months? We'll lose everything anyway, just slower." "So what are you saying? That we should just give up?" "I'm saying maybe they're right. Maybe this is too hard, too complicated, too—" "Don't!" He crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed my shoulders. Don't you dare let them convince you this isn't worth fighting for. How do you know it is? We've been married 3 months, Caleb. 3 months. And most of that time we've barely spoken, barely acknowledged each other as anything more than business partners. Now suddenly you're willing to lose everything for me? That doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense. His grip tightened, not painful, but insistent. Because somewhere in those 3 months, you became the only person I trust. The only person who sees me instead of my last name or my father's money. You think I haven't noticed how you reorganized this entire ranch without making it feel like you were taking over? How you fixed years of problems without once making me feel incompetent? How you're the first person I want to talk to at the end of every day? That's just, we work well together. That's not the same as what? Love? He said the word like it was dangerous. Maybe not. But it's something real, and I'm not giving it up because our fathers decided to play games with our lives. I wanted to believe him, wanted to sink into the certainty in his voice and let it carry me. But reality was pressing down hard, and wanting something didn't make it possible. Even if we fight, I said slowly, even if we somehow win, what kind of marriage will we have? You'll resent me for costing you your inheritance. I'll feel guilty for ruining your life. That's not sustainable. I won't resent you. You say that now. But 5 years from now, when we're struggling to keep the ranch running, when you see what you could have had if you just let me go, I'll see that I made the right choice. He pulled me closer, and his eyes were fierce. You want to know what I'd resent? Spending my life as my father's puppet, married to some woman I don't know, building an empire I don't care about. That's what I'd resent. Not this. Never this. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Mrs. Chen entered, looking flustered. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a problem. Your father's here, Eliza, and he brought people. We found my father in the parlor with 3 men I didn't recognize, lawyers, from the look of them. Expensive suits, leather briefcases, the kind of polished confidence that came from winning cases for a living. My father stood when we entered, but his expression was cold. Eliza, I'd hoped you'd come home on your own, but since you haven't, I've been forced to take measures. Forced by who? I asked. I never asked you to do this. You don't know what you're asking for. You've been manipulated, taken advantage of. I'm 23 years old. I can make my own decisions. Can you? Because from where I stand, you made a desperate choice in a moment of crisis, and now you're too proud to admit it was a mistake. He gestured to the lawyers. These gentlemen have reviewed the circumstances of your marriage. The rushed ceremony, the public pressure, the fact that you had mere minutes to make a life-altering decision. Any court will see this as a marriage entered into under duress. One of the lawyers stepped forward. Miss Miller? Mrs. Royce, Caleb corrected sharply. The lawyer didn't miss a beat. Mrs. Royce, I'm James Peterson. I specialize in family law, specifically cases involving coerced marriages. Your father has retained me to file for annulment on your behalf. I don't want an annulment. With respect, many victims of coercion don't recognize their situation immediately. It's a documented phenomenon. He pulled papers from his briefcase. However, the law is quite clear. A marriage entered into without free and informed consent can be dissolved. And given the circumstances, your sister's abandonment, the public humiliation, the pressure from both families, it's evident that your consent was compromised. My consent was fine. I knew what I was doing. Did you? You'd met Mr. Royce exactly twice before the wedding. You had no courtship, no engagement period, no time to consider the implications. You made this decision in front of 300 people while your family's reputation was collapsing. Peterson's voice was smooth, practiced. That's not free consent. That's panic. It was a choice made under impossible circumstances. My father moved closer. Eliza, please, be reasonable. This man doesn't love you. He married you to prove a point to his father. Everyone knows it. Are you really willing to throw your life away for that? It's my life to throw away. Not when you're making decisions based on trauma and pressure. He softened his tone, trying a different approach. I know I haven't always been the father you deserved. I focused too much on Clara, let you fade into the background. But I'm trying to fix that now. Come home. We'll find you a proper husband, someone who actually wants you, who'll court you properly. Like you found Clara a proper husband? The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. She ran off with a drifter rather than marry the man you chose. What makes you think I'll be any different? Because you're smarter than your sister. More practical. You understand duty. Is that what I am to you, the practical daughter? The one who understands duty? I laughed, and it sounded harsh. You're right. I do understand duty, which is why I've spent my entire life cleaning up messes, fixing problems, making sure everything runs smoothly. And I'm done. I'm done being practical and dutiful and invisible. This marriage might not be perfect, but it's mine. My choice. And I'm keeping it. My father's expression hardened. Then you leave me no choice. Mr. Peterson, proceed with the filing. Wait. Edmund Royce's voice cut through the room. I hadn't heard him arrive, but there he was, standing in the doorway with his own lawyer beside him. Before you proceed, Thomas, we should discuss the financial implications. My father turned. What financial implications? The merger agreement specified certain obligations on both sides. If you dissolve this marriage against Eliza's stated wishes, you'll be in breach of contract. The penalties for that are substantial. Edmund moved into the room with that predatory grace he had. I believe the amount was $50,000, plus interest, plus any damages we can prove resulted from the breach. Peterson frowned. The merger agreement was for Clara Miller, not Eliza. The substitution of brides would itself be grounds for voiding the contract. Would it? My son married a Miller daughter, as specified. The contract didn't name which daughter. Edmund's lawyer stepped forward with his own briefcase. In fact, if you read the fine print, you'll see that Thomas agreed to provide a daughter of marriageable age from the Miller family for union with a Royce heir. Both conditions were met. That's a technicality. The law runs on technicalities, Mr. Peterson. You should know that. Edmund smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. If you pursue this annulment, I'll countersue for breach of contract, and I have significantly more resources than the Miller family. We could drag this out for years. Cost you everything. My father went pale. You wouldn't. Try me. Edmund looked at Caleb then, something complicated passing between them. My son has made his choice. I don't agree with it, don't particularly like it, but it's his to make. And I won't have the Miller family destroying what he's built just because you've decided to develop a conscience about your daughter's welfare. This isn't about business, my father protested. This is about protecting Eliza from a mistake. Eliza's an adult who's stated clearly what she wants. Respect that, or prepare for a very expensive legal battle. Edmund gestured to his lawyer. File the countersuit papers. Make it very clear what Thomas faces if he continues this path. The room erupted into arguments between lawyers, points and counterpoints flying back and forth about contracts and jurisdiction and legal precedent. I stopped listening, just stood there feeling like a piece of property being fought over by men who all claimed to know what was best for me. Caleb's hand found mine, squeezed gently. I looked at him, and he mouthed, "You okay?" I nodded, even though I wasn't sure it was true. Finally, Peterson held up his hands. "Gentlemen, this is getting us nowhere. Perhaps we should table this discussion and reconvene when everyone's had time to review the relevant documents." "There's nothing to review," Caleb said. "Eliza stays. That's not negotiable." "Son," Edmund started, but Caleb cut him off. "And while we're being clear, I'm rejecting the Harrison proposal. I'm not interested in their daughter, their land, or their connections. I'm married, and I'm staying married." Edmund's expression went cold. "Then our previous conversation stands. You're on your own financially." "I know. You'll lose half your operation within a year without my backing. Maybe. Or maybe Eliza and I will find a way to make it work. We've done pretty well so far." Caleb's hand tightened on mine. "Either way, it's our problem to solve. Not yours." For a long moment, father and son stared at each other. Years of conflict and control and complicated love written in that look. Then Edmund nodded slowly. "Very well. But don't come crawling back when this all falls apart." "I won't." Edmund turned to my father. "Thomas, I suggest you withdraw your petition. You won't win, and it'll cost you more than you can afford. Let your daughter live her own life." My father looked at me, and for the first time I saw something like uncertainty in his eyes. "Is this really what you want, Eliza? To stay here, married to a man who's about to lose everything?" "Yes," I said firmly. "It is. Even if it means we're not close anymore? If you choose him, you're choosing against your family." "No, I'm choosing for myself. There's a difference." I stepped closer to him. You want to protect me? Then respect my decisions. Trust that maybe, just maybe, I know what I'm doing. He shook his head slowly. I hope you're right, because if you're wrong, I won't be there to catch you when you fall. I'm not going to fall. Everyone falls eventually, but he gestured to his lawyers. Pack it up. We're done here. Peterson looked startled. Mr. Miller, I strongly advise I said we're done. Send me your bill. My father moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Eliza, your mother always said you were stronger than Clara. I never believed her. Maybe I should have. Then he was gone, taking his lawyers and his ultimatums with him. The room felt too quiet in the aftermath. Edmund stood there for a moment, looking at Caleb with an expression I couldn't quite read. You're making a mistake, he said finally. Probably. I make a lot of them. Caleb's arm came around my waist, solid and sure. But this one's mine, so be it. Edmund nodded to his lawyer. Make sure the countersuit papers are ready if Miller changes his mind. And Caleb, when you need money, and you will need money, don't expect me to help. You've chosen your path. I understand. After Edmund left, the house felt different, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. Or maybe it was just that we'd survived something we weren't sure we would. Mrs. Chen appeared with tea she'd been heating, probably listening to everything. You two should sit down. You look exhausted. We collapsed onto the sofa, and I realized I was shaking. Caleb pulled me against him, and I let myself lean into his warmth. That was, I started, but couldn't finish. Terrifying, overwhelming, possibly the worst few hours of our lives? All of that. I laughed shakily. Your father's really cutting you off. Looks like it. We could lose the ranch. We might. Aren't you scared? Absolutely. He tipped my chin up so I was looking at him. But I'm more scared of losing you. The ranch, the money, my father's approval. I can live without all of that. But you? You've become essential. Since when? I don't know. Somewhere between you fixing my books and facing down my father without flinching. Somewhere in all those evenings in the study, arguing about supply costs and staffing decisions. He brushed hair from my face. I think I've been falling for you for weeks and was too stubborn to admit it. My heart was doing something complicated in my chest. That's not very practical. No, but you said you were done being practical. He smiled and it transformed his whole face. So let's both be impractical for once. What if we fail? What if we can't make this work financially? Then we'll fail together. But I don't think we will. He gestured around the house. You've saved this operation $4,000 in 3 months. If anyone can figure out how to survive without my father's money, it's you. That's a lot of faith to put in someone you barely know. I know you better than you think. I know you're brilliant with numbers. I know you hate mornings but pretend you don't. I know you reorganize the supply closet when you're anxious, and you bite your lip when you're concentrating on ledgers. His thumb traced my jaw. I know you're stronger than anyone gives you credit for, including yourself. And I know I want to spend the rest of my life learning everything else. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the warmth of his hand on my face, the steadiness of his gaze. This is going to be hard, I whispered. I know. We might actually lose everything. I know that too. And you're still choosing this? Still choosing me? Every single time. He leaned in, and this kiss was different from the others. Deeper, more honest. A promise that felt like it might actually hold. When we pulled apart, I was crying, and I wasn't even sure why. Relief, maybe. Or fear. Or the overwhelming feeling of being chosen, really chosen, for the first time in my life. We should tell Mrs. Chen to prepare the guest rooms, I said, trying to regain some composure. Your father will probably come back with more lawyers. Let him. We'll be ready. Caleb stood, pulling me up with him. But right now, I think we should celebrate. Celebrate what? Being disowned and threatened with lawsuits? Celebrate surviving it together. He led me toward the dining room. Mrs. Chen, do we have any of that wine left from the wedding? The good stuff or the cheap stuff? She called back. The good stuff. We're celebrating. What are we celebrating? She asked, appearing with a bottle and glasses. Our marriage, Caleb said, and the way he said it, proud, certain, like it was something worth celebrating, made my chest tight. We drank wine we probably couldn't afford anymore and ate food. Mrs. Chen insisted on preparing despite the late hour, and for the first time since the wedding, it felt like we were actually married. Not business partners or reluctant allies, but two people who'd chosen each other despite everything trying to tear them apart. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, there was a knock on my door. Caleb stood in the hallway, looking uncertain. "Can I come in?" I nodded, stepping back. He entered slowly, taking in the room that had been Clara's, that I'd slowly made mine over the past months. "I was thinking," he said, not looking at me, "about what you said earlier, about sleeping alone every night in a room that was supposed to be hers. Caleb, I don't want that for you, for us." He finally met my eyes. This house was set up for a marriage to Clara. Separate rooms, separate lives. But that's not what we have anymore. Is it? My heart was pounding. "What are you suggesting?" "That maybe we stop pretending this is just a business arrangement, that maybe we actually try to build something real." He moved closer. "If you want to. No pressure. I want you to know the option is there." I thought about the past 3 months. The careful distance we'd maintained, the separate bedrooms, the walls we'd built to protect ourselves. And I thought about what Clara had said, about living in a house meant for someone else, always being second choice. But Clara was wrong. This wasn't her house anymore. Wasn't her marriage. It was mine. Ours. And we got to decide what it looked like. "Yes," I said softly. "Yes? I want to try. To build something real." I took a breath. "I'm scared I'll disappoint you. That I won't be—" "You won't. You couldn't." He took my hands. "I'm scared too. I'm terrible at this, at opening up, at being vulnerable. But I want to try. With you." That night, for the first time, I didn't sleep alone. Caleb stayed, and we talked until dawn about everything and nothing. About our fears, our hopes, our complicated families, and impossible situation. And when I finally fell asleep, it was with his arm around me, solid and warm and real. The next morning, we woke to chaos. Mrs. Chen was pounding on the door, her voice urgent. "Mr. Royce, Eliza, you need to see this." We scrambled downstairs to find her holding a newspaper, her face pale. The headline screamed across the front page, "Royce heir embroiled in sister scandal, questions raised about marriage legitimacy." Below it was a detailed article about our marriage, filled with quotes from anonymous sources about how Caleb had been seen with Clara around town, how the marriage to me had been rushed and suspicious, how there were rumors of an affair with the original bride, and at the bottom, a quote attributed to Clara herself. "I made a mistake running away. Caleb and I had a real connection, and I think we both regret how things turned out, but I would never come between him and my sister, even though I know he married her out of obligation rather than love." The implication was clear, devastating, that Caleb had married me while still wanting Clara, that our marriage was a sham covering up an inappropriate relationship. That line, I couldn't even finish the sentence. I was so angry. Caleb was reading the article, his expression getting darker with every line. "This is deliberate. Someone's trying to destroy our credibility before any court proceedings." "Clara," I said, "this has her fingerprints all over it. She gave them that quote. But who paid for the rest? This kind of hit piece doesn't come cheap." He flipped through the pages. "There are anonymous sources claiming to have witnessed inappropriate interactions, detailed accounts of meetings that never happened. This was orchestrated." Mrs. Chen cleared her throat. "There's more. A courier came this morning. Legal notice. You're being sued for breach of promise." "By who?" "The Harrison family." She handed over the papers. "They're claiming you agreed to a marriage arrangement with their daughter, then reneged after they'd made substantial preparations. They're seeking damages for reputational harm and lost opportunities." Caleb stared at the papers in disbelief. "I never agreed to anything with the Harrisons. My father suggested it. I said no. That was the entire conversation. They claim to have correspondence suggesting otherwise, letters apparently outlining terms of the arrangement." Mrs. Chen looked apologetic. "It's all in the filing." "Forged," I said immediately. "Has to be. They're manufacturing evidence." "Probably, but proving that will cost time and money we don't have." Caleb set the papers down carefully, like they might bite. "This is coordinated. The article to destroy our reputation, the lawsuit to drain our resources. Everything happening at once. My father orchestrated this. Or my father did. Or they're working together. I felt sick. They're not just trying to end our marriage, they're trying to destroy us completely. So what do we do? It was the question we'd been avoiding, the one that mattered most. We could fight, spend everything we had on lawyers and lawsuits, defend our marriage and our reputation in court. But that would mean losing the ranch anyway, just to legal fees instead of poor management. Or we could surrender, sign the annulment papers, accept that we'd been beaten by forces bigger than us. I looked at Caleb, at this man who'd stood up to his father for me, who'd risked everything to keep me, and I made a decision. We fight, I said, but not the way they expect. What do you mean? They want a spectacle, a scandal? We'll give them one. I grabbed the newspaper, staring at Clara's quote. We're going to court, but not to defend ourselves quietly. We're going to make them prove every single accusation, make it public, messy, impossible to ignore. And when it's over, everyone will know exactly who lied and who's telling the truth. Caleb's eyes widened. That could backfire spectacularly. It could, but we're going to lose anyway if we play by their rules, so let's change the rules. I looked at him. Are you with me? He thought about it for maybe 3 seconds. Then he smiled, a real smile, wild and dangerous and completely genuine. I'm with you, he said. Let's burn it all down. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled, people standing along the back wall, necks craning to see. I'd never been the center of attention before, and I hated it. But I forced myself to walk down that aisle with my head high, Caleb's hand firm on my elbow. We'd spent 2 weeks preparing for this. 2 weeks of gathering evidence, tracking down witnesses, building a case that would expose everyone who'd tried to tear us apart. Our lawyer, Margaret Chen, no relation to our housekeeper, though they shared a last name and a certain steely determination, sat at our table reviewing her notes. Remember, she said quietly as we sat down, stay calm no matter what they say. Don't react. Don't give them ammunition. Across the aisle, my father sat with his legal team. Edmund Royce was several rows back, watching everything with that calculating gaze. And Clara, beautiful, smug Clara, was in the front row with Richard Blackwell, dressed like she was attending a social event rather than a trial that could destroy her sister. The judge entered and everyone stood. Judge Morrison was in his 60s, with silver hair and a reputation for no-nonsense rulings. He'd seen it all, according to Margaret, and didn't tolerate games. Be seated, he said, settling into his chair. We're here to consider a petition for annulment filed by Thomas Miller on behalf of his daughter, Eliza Miller Royce, claiming the marriage was entered into under duress. Additionally, we have a countersuit filed by the Royce family claiming breach of contract. And, he shuffled papers, a separate suit from the Harrison family claiming breach of promise. This is quite the mess. Your Honor, Peterson stood smooth and confident. If I may address the court, you may not. I've read all the briefs, all the motions, all the dramatic newspaper articles. Judge Morrison's tone was dry. What I want now is testimony, real people telling me what actually happened. Mrs. Royce, you'll go first. My stomach dropped. I hadn't expected to testify so soon. Margaret squeezed my hand as I stood, walked to the witness stand, took the oath with a voice that shook slightly. Peterson approached me like a predator who'd spotted wounded prey. Mrs. Royce, or should I say Miss Miller, given that we're here to dissolve that marriage, let's start with the day of the wedding. Can you describe your emotional state? I was nervous. Nervous, that's putting it mildly, isn't it? Your sister had just abandoned her own wedding, your family was being humiliated in front of the entire town, and you were being pushed to take her place. That's not nervous, that's traumatic. It was unexpected, I allowed. Did anyone ask if you wanted to marry Caleb Royce? Did anyone check if you were consenting freely, or were you simply told this was happening? Caleb asked me. I said yes. After how much time to consider? 5 minutes? 10? Peterson's voice was sympathetic, like he felt sorry for me. A decision that should take months of courtship was made in the span of a conversation. That's not informed consent. I knew what I was agreeing to. Did you? Did you know your husband only proposed because he was angry at his father? Because he wanted to prove a point, not because he had any genuine interest in you? He pulled out the newspaper article. Did you know he'd been meeting with your sister secretly after the wedding? That's not true. We have witnesses who saw them together, Multiple times. Your own sister confirmed they had a connection. He leaned closer. How does that feel knowing you're living in a house meant for her, married to a man who still wants her? Objection, Margaret called out. Speculation and inflammatory. Sustained, the judge said. Mr. Peterson, ask real questions or sit down. Peterson didn't miss a beat. Mrs. Royce, has your husband ever told you he loves you? The question hit like a punch. I looked at Caleb, who was watching me with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. Not in those exact words, I said finally. Has he ever demonstrated affection beyond what a business partner might show? Our relationship is complicated. It's not complicated. It's non-existent. You live as roommates, don't you? Separate bedrooms, separate lives. That's not a marriage. That's a business arrangement masquerading as one. Peterson turned to the judge. Your Honor, this is clearly a marriage of convenience entered into under extreme pressure. The young woman deserves the chance to start over with someone who actually wants her. Are you finished? Judge Morrison asked. Yes, Your Honor. Good. Mrs. Chen, your witness. Margaret stood and her approach was completely different, gentle, almost casual. Eliza, why did you say yes to Caleb's proposal? Because I wanted to. Even knowing it was rushed? Even knowing people would talk? Yes. Why? I took a breath. Because for the first time in my life, someone was choosing me. Not out of obligation, not because I was the only option left, but because I was there and I was capable and I was enough. Maybe his reasons weren't romantic, but they were honest, and I'd rather be honestly chosen for the wrong reasons than dishonestly courted for the right ones. How has the marriage been? Hard, awkward, sometimes lonely. I saw Peterson start to smile, then continued, but also honest. We built something together, a partnership based on respect and trust, and actually seeing each other as real people instead of just playing roles. Do you want this marriage annulled? No. Even if it means losing your father's approval? Even if it means financial hardship? Even then, Margaret nodded. No further questions. Peterson stood immediately. Redirect, Your Honor. Mrs. Royce, you mention respect and trust, but your husband has been meeting with your sister behind your back. How is that trust? He hasn't been meeting with her. She's been ambushing him in public places, and he's been polite enough to acknowledge her existence. There's a difference. Is there? Because witnesses report seeing them in deep conversation. Then your witnesses are either lying or exaggerating. I've asked Caleb directly about Clara. He's been honest. That's more than I can say for my sister, who's apparently been telling newspapers we have some kind of doomed love affair. Clara's face flushed red, but she kept smiling. Peterson tried a few more angles, but I held firm. Finally, he gave up and called his next witness. My father. He looked older than I remembered, walking to the stand, tired. When he was sworn in, his hand shook slightly. Mr. Miller, Peterson began, why did you file this petition? Because my daughter was coerced into a marriage she didn't want. Because I failed to protect her when she needed me. His voice was rough. Eliza has spent her whole life fixing other people's problems. This time, I wanted to fix hers. By forcing an annulment she's stated she doesn't want? She doesn't know what she wants. She's been manipulated. Has she? Or has she finally made a choice for herself and you can't accept it? Margaret stood. Mr. Miller, isn't it true that you've been pressured by Edmund Royce to pursue this annulment? That's not... Isn't it true that Edmund offered you financial compensation if you'd help dissolve the marriage? That this entire petition is really about two fathers trying to control their children's lives? My father's face went red. I'm trying to protect my daughter. From what? From happiness? From a marriage that's actually working? Margaret pulled out documents. These are financial records from the Royce Ranch. In the 4 months since Eliza married Caleb, they've increased efficiency by 30%, recovered $12,000 in stolen funds, and improved their profit margin significantly. She's not a victim. She's a partner. And you're trying to take that away from her because you can't stand that she chose something you didn't approve. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Mr. Miller. Your daughter learned that when you spent 23 years treating her as invisible while doting on her sister. She learned it when Clara ran away and Eliza had to clean up the mess. And she's learning it now, watching you try to destroy the one good thing she's built for herself. Objection! Peterson was on his feet. This is irrelevant to the question of whether the marriage was entered into under duress. It's completely relevant, Margaret shot back, because duress implies force, and the only force here is coming from the fathers trying to dissolve a marriage two adults want to keep. Judge Morrison held up a hand. Both of you, sit down. I've heard enough. He looked at my father. Mr. Miller, does your daughter appear to be in danger? Is her husband abusing her, controlling her, harming her in any way? No, but is she unhappy, visibly distressed, asking for help? She says she isn't, but then why are we here? The judge's tone was sharp. Because from where I sit, this looks like a father who can't accept that his daughter made her own choice. Case dismissed. Peterson jumped up. Your Honor, we haven't presented half our witnesses. I don't need to hear them. The alleged victim is sitting right there telling me she doesn't want to be saved. Unless you have evidence of actual coercion beyond the circumstances were unusual, this petition is denied. The courtroom erupted. My father looked stunned. Peterson was arguing frantically with the judge, but Morrison was already moving on to the next case. The breach of contract suit, he said. Mr. Royce, you claim Thomas Miller violated the merger agreement. Do you wish to proceed? Edmund stood slowly. I held my breath, waiting for him to destroy my father, to extract his revenge for this whole mess. No, Your Honor, Edmund said quietly. I withdraw the suit. Everyone stared. Even Caleb looked shocked. You're certain? Judge Morrison asked. Yes. This has gone on long enough. Edmund looked at Caleb, and something passed between them. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe understanding. My son made his choice. I can accept that or not, but dragging it through court won't change anything. Very well. Suit dismissed. The judge turned to the Harrison family's lawyer. And the breach of promise claim? The lawyer stood, but before he could speak, Caleb was on his feet. Your Honor, I'd like to address that directly. Go ahead. Caleb walked to the center of the courtroom and every eye was on him. I never agreed to marry anyone from the Harrison family. My father suggested it. I said no. That was the entire conversation. If anyone told the Harrisons otherwise, they were lying. We have letters, the lawyer started. Forged letters. Because I never wrote them. Caleb's voice was steel. And I'm willing to testify under oath to that effect. Are you willing to present your evidence and have it examined for authenticity? Because if those letters are fake, whoever created them committed fraud. The lawyer paled. He whispered something to the Harrison family patriarch, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. We may have been misinformed, the lawyer said finally. We withdraw the suit. Smart choice, Margaret muttered. Judge Morrison banged his gavel. All suits dismissed. This circus is over. Everyone go home. People started filing out, buzzing with conversation. I sat there, trying to process what had just happened. We'd won. Actually won. Caleb pulled me to my feet, and before I could think, he was kissing me right there in the courtroom. Not the polite kiss from our wedding or the tentative ones from our bedroom. This was real, passionate, the kind of kiss that made 300 people at our wedding look away awkwardly. When he pulled back, I was breathless. We did it, he said. Your father withdrew his suit. Why would he? Because he realized he'd lost. That he could either accept me as I am or lose me entirely. Caleb glanced back at where Edmund was leaving, then shrugged. Maybe we'll repair that relationship someday. Maybe we won't. But it's not my priority right now. What is your priority? You, us. Building the life we want instead of the one everyone else planned for us. Margaret appeared beside us, grinning. That was quite the show. You two made my job very easy by actually wanting to stay married. What happens now? I asked. Now you go home, live your life. Try to avoid any more lawsuits for at least a few months. She paused. And maybe talk to that sister of yours. Because what she did, giving that quote to the newspaper, spreading lies about you, that was cruel. You deserve an apology. I looked across the courtroom to where Clara was standing with Richard, looking significantly less smug than when this started. Our eyes met, and something complicated passed between us. I walked over to her, Caleb right behind me. Ellie, Clara started, but I held up my hand. You tried to destroy my marriage because you couldn't stand seeing me happy. Because for once in our lives, I had something you didn't. That's not... It is. And you know what? I'm done. Done trying to be the good sister, the understanding one, The one who cleans up your messes and forgives you for everything. I stepped closer. You're beautiful and charming and everyone's favorite. You'll land on your feet no matter what you do, but I'm not going to be there to catch you anymore. Figure it out yourself. Clara's eyes filled with tears, but they looked calculated, practiced. I was trying to help. I thought you deserved better than what? Than a husband who respects me? Who values what I bring to his life? Who chose me? I shook my head. You don't get to decide what I deserve. That's my choice now. I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. Ellie, wait. I'm sorry. I really am. And for once, she actually sounded sincere. I hated that you were happy when I was miserable. I hated that you made this work when I ran away. It made me look bad and I couldn't stand it. I know. Can you forgive me? I thought about it. About all the years of being second best, overlooked, invisible. About the wedding day when she ran and left me to pick up the pieces. About the past months of her trying to poison something good because she couldn't be happy for me. Maybe someday, I said finally. But not today. Today, I'm going home with my husband, and you're going to leave us alone. Clara nodded, tears actually falling now. Real ones, I thought. Okay. Outside the courthouse, my father was waiting by his carriage. When he saw me, he looked like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. I'm sorry, he said finally. Your mother was right. She said I'd spend 23 years ignoring you and you'd turn out stronger for it. That you'd learn to rely on yourself instead of waiting for someone else to save you. I hated that she was right, so I tried to save you anyway. But you didn't need saving. No, I didn't. I've been a terrible father to you, better to Clara, but that did her no favors either. He looked older, defeated. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know I see it now, see you now. And I'm proud of what you've built. It wasn't enough. Wouldn't make up for 23 years of being invisible. But it was something. Thank you, I said quietly. Will you visit? Your mother would like to see you. Maybe. Eventually. I took Caleb's hand. But right now I need to focus on my own life, my own family. My father nodded, climbed into his carriage, and left. Edmund approached us next, and Caleb tensed, but his father just held out his hand. You were right, Edmund said, about choosing your own path. I didn't make it easy, and I'm not sorry for pushing you, but I'm sorry for not trusting you to make your own decisions. Caleb shook his hand cautiously. Does this mean you're not cutting me off? I'm still thinking about it. But Edmund's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Let's say I'm open to renegotiating our arrangement. If you can prove you don't need my money to succeed. We will. Good. Then I'll expect quarterly reports on the ranch's performance, and perhaps dinner once a month. Your mother misses you. It wasn't reconciliation, exactly, but it was a door left open instead of slammed shut. That was more than we'd had before. The ride home was quiet. Not the awkward silence from our wedding night, but the comfortable kind. The kind that came from having survived something together. I can't believe that worked, I said finally. Which part? Winning the case or making our fathers back down? All of it. I keep waiting for something else to go wrong. Nothing's going to go wrong. Well, nothing more than the usual disasters of running a ranch. He squeezed my hand. We're free now. Actually free to build whatever kind of life we want. Without your father's money, that life is going to be a lot harder. I know, but we've been preparing for this. You've already cut our costs significantly. And I've been talking to some smaller investors who might be interested in partnering on the mining operation we've been considering. The copper deposits on the north section? Exactly. If we can get that operational, we'd be self-sufficient within 2 years. Maybe sooner with your management. I smiled despite myself. Even in the middle of everything, we were talking business, planning, building. It's what we did best. When we arrived home, Mrs. Chen had dinner waiting and champagne she'd been saving for something special. We ate at the table together, actually together, not at opposite ends like strangers, and talked about everything that had happened. You were magnificent in that courtroom, Caleb said. The way you stood up to Peterson, to your father. You didn't back down even when they tried to make you feel small. I've had a lot of practice being made to feel small. I'm done with it. Good. Because you're not small. You're the strongest person I know. He reached across the table, took my hand. I know I've been terrible at this. At the relationship part, I'm good at business, at strategy, at keeping people at a distance, but I want to get better. At us, I'm not great at it either. I've spent so long being invisible that I don't really know how to be seen. Then we'll figure it out together. Make mistakes, fix them, keep trying. He smiled. We're good at fixing things. We are, I agreed. That night, I didn't go to the room that used to be Clara's. I went to Caleb's, to our room now. And for the first time, our marriage felt like an actual marriage. Not perfect, not without complications, but real. Honest. Ours. The weeks that followed weren't easy. We had to restructure the entire ranch operation to work without Edmund's backing. Had to make hard decisions about staffing, about which investments to pursue and which to abandon. There were days when the numbers didn't add up, and nights when we stayed up until dawn trying to solve problems that seemed impossible, but we did it together. And slowly, incrementally, things started working. The copper mining operation was profitable within 6 months. We expanded our cattle operation using loans from smaller investors who believed in what we were building. And every month, when we sent our financial reports to Edmund, the numbers got a little better. My mother visited 3 months after the trial. She came alone without my father and spent a week helping me reorganize the household and telling me stories about her own difficult marriage. Your father wasn't always like this, she said one afternoon while we were working in the garden. When we married, he was passionate, attentive. But somewhere along the way, he decided that providing financially was the same as being a good husband, a good father. He forgot about everything else. Why did you stay? Because leaving would have meant losing everything, and because despite his flaws, I loved him. Still do, in my way. She looked at me. But you're stronger than I was. You wouldn't have stayed if it didn't make you happy. How do you know I'm happy? Because you glow, Eliza. You're different from the quiet girl who lived in her sister's shadow. You've become yourself. It was true, I had changed. Or maybe I'd just finally become who I was always meant to be. Clara wrote occasionally. Brief letters, mostly about her life with Richard, occasionally including awkward apologies that felt half sincere. I wrote back, keeping things polite and distant. Maybe someday we'd rebuild some version of a sisterly relationship. But that day wasn't today. A year after the trial, Edmund came for dinner, not to evaluate our operation or deliver ultimatums, but as a guest, a father visiting his son. I was wrong, he said over dessert. About the Harrison match, about thinking I knew what was best for you. You've built something impressive here. We built it, Caleb corrected, gesturing to me. Eliza's done most of the heavy lifting. Edmund nodded. I see that, and I'm sorry, Eliza, for how I treated you. For trying to buy you off, for suggesting you weren't good enough for my son. You've proven me wrong on every count. Thank you, I said, and meant it. I'd like to help, Edmund continued. Not take over, not control things, but perhaps invest in your mining operation, as a silent partner, if you'd allow it. Caleb looked at me, and I knew he was leaving the decision to me. On one condition, I said. Name it. You treat us as equals. Not as your son who needs managing, but as business partners who've proven we know what we're doing. Edmund smiled, a real smile this time. Deal. 2 years after the wedding that wasn't supposed to happen, Caleb and I stood in the newly renovated main house, looking at what we'd built together. The ranch was thriving, the mining operation was expanding, and the house had been completely transformed from the cold, impersonal space it used to be into something warm, lived in, ours. Remember when you told me this would never be a love match? I said, leaning against him as we surveyed the parlor we'd just refinished. I was an idiot. You were scared. That too. He pulled me closer. But somewhere between the ledgers and the lawsuits and the late nights planning how to save the ranch, I fell completely in love with you. Just somewhere? You can't narrow it down more than that? Fine. It was probably the day you told my father to treat us as equals or get out. You were magnificent. I laughed. I was terrified. You were both. But you did it anyway. He kissed the top of my head. You're always doing things anyway, even when you're scared. It's one of my favorite things about you. What are the other favorite things? Your mind, your determination, the way you bite your lip when you're concentrating, the way you reorganize the supply closet when you're anxious. You notice that? I notice everything about you. He turned me to face him. I know this wasn't what either of us planned. I know we started this all wrong, for all the wrong reasons, but I wouldn't change it, not any of it, because it led us here. He was right. We'd been forced together by circumstance, humiliation, and stubborn pride. We'd been the wrong bride and the defiant groom making the best of an impossible situation. And somehow, impossibly, we'd built something real. Not the fairy tale Clara had always wanted, not the dynasty marriage our fathers had planned, but something better, something honest, a partnership that became a friendship, that became love. I wouldn't change it either, I said softly. Well, maybe I'd have worn a better dress to our wedding. That one was meant for Clara, and it never quite fit right. Then we'll have another wedding, just us, in the garden, with vows we actually mean this time. We meant them the first time. Did we? I thought about it. About standing at that altar with a stranger, making promises I didn't fully understand. And I thought about now, standing in our home with a man I knew completely. Maybe not, I admitted, but we grew into them. We did have that second wedding 3 months later, just our closest friends, our mothers, and Edmund, who actually cried during the ceremony. Clara sent a gift but didn't attend, and that was fine. This wasn't about her. Had never been about her. This was about two people who'd been thrown together by chaos and chose to stay together by love. I wore a dress I picked out myself. Nothing fancy, just simple and mine. Caleb wore his best suit and looked at me like I was the only person in the world. And when we said our vows this time, they were words we'd written ourselves. Promises we knew we could keep because we'd already been keeping them. To choose each other every day. To build together, fix together, fail together, and try again. To be partners in every sense of the word. To never take each other for granted. And to remember that the best things in life aren't planned. They're stumbled into, fought for, and built from the wreckage of other people's expectations. Later that night, long after the guests had left and the house was quiet, Caleb and I sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors. Do you think they knew? I asked. Our fathers, when they planned that first wedding. Do you think they had any idea what they were actually setting in motion? No. They were thinking about money and power and legacy. They weren't thinking about us at all. And look what we built anyway. Look what we built anyway, he agreed. I leaned against him, his arms solid around my shoulders, and thought about that terrified girl standing at the altar 3 years ago. The one who said yes because she was desperate for anything that wasn't being invisible. Who married a stranger out of duty and fear and a wild hope that maybe, just maybe, this would be different. She'd been right to hope. Even when everything seemed impossible, even when the whole world was trying to tear them apart, they'd held on, built something, became something. Not perfect, never perfect, but real. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Not the circumstances that brought you together, but what you chose to build once you were there. Not the wedding everyone planned, but the marriage you made for yourselves. I'd been the second choice, the replacement bride, the sister nobody expected anything from. And Caleb had been the defiant son, marrying out of spite and stubbornness. But we'd become each other's first choice, our own choice. And that made all the difference. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting everything gold, and somewhere in the house, Mrs. Chen was probably preparing dinner and muttering about how we never came in when we were supposed to. And tomorrow there would be ranch work and financial planning and all the ordinary complications of building a life together. But tonight, we just sat there. Two people who'd accidentally found exactly what they needed in the last place they'd expected to look. I love you, Caleb said quietly. I love you too, I replied. And for the first time in my entire life, I knew exactly what those words meant. Knew they were true. Knew they were mine to give and his to keep. Not because we were supposed to, not because anyone expected us to, but because we chose it. Every single day we chose it. And that choice, messy and imperfect and entirely our own, was worth everything we'd fought for, worth everything we'd lost, worth everything we'd become.